Good. Hello? It says sign in to chat. Do we have to... Oh, I guess we're not really like talking to people. Are we live though? Yes, we're live.
We're live.
Hello! You think after like a certain amount of time doing this, maybe, close to 10 years now, and we'd have figured this whole... Oh, God. Bear with us a second. Hello. Hello, all. Hello, friends. Welcome to another live. Today's live, we're going to break into the code book. There's a lot of people studying. I think we get maybe the most amount of questions that I get on like every DM and message and email is something about code. There's a lot of like career questions, actually. I'd say there's kind of a running race between like, should I be an electrician? Am I too old to be an electrician? Should I go in the union? Should I not go in the union? And like code stuff. So I just wanted to talk about the book in general because I think the first problem is that when you're an apprentice and you're starting to get into this, you don't really understand anything that this is talking about, like grounding electrodes and equipment grounding conductors and all these like weird phrases, utilization equipment. It's like written in legalese, so it's like reading a legal document. It's really, really crazy. So I have some stuff that I came up with, kind of a mnemonic. So if any of you, I don't know if you may not know what a mnemonic is. A mnemonic, spelled Mnemonic, mnemonic, is a memory device. So there's like, I read this book once that there's all these people that do like memory competitions and they try to see like what's the craziest thing they can memorize. And there's people that have like memorized the first 50,000 characters of pi, because pi is a number that doesn't repeat. It's just random numbers. There's people that can take 3 card decks and flip them 3 cards at a time and put it down and memorize the entire thing. So there's using like kind of crazy weird memory devices where you imagine something in your head as like a story almost, and you can remember anything. So it's really cool. I've always wanted to do it for the entire code book, but since it changes every 3 years, it would be such a messy thing to do to like memorize the entire book. But anyways, I have a little bit of a mnemonic that I think kind of helps understand what each chunk of code, each chapter is about. So before we get into it, let me read some of the comments. We've got H. Lopez, hello, your best advice for someone who is in school for the trade and is about to help out with solar and backup battery install. In school for the trade. All right, dude. So when you get out in the field, just understand that you're in an environment where work ethic matters more than grades mattered when you were in school. So like they're kind of tied together, right? To get good grades, you actually have to fully apply yourself. You have to touch the material every single day. If you want an A in a class, you got to be every day in it, constantly chewing, researching, digging in. If you're okay with getting a C in class, it means that you're just kind of like going to the lecture and then, oh crap, I got homework. I got to do my homework, whatever. But you're not like locked into it. So the same thing applies is if you're in the field and you're locked in, like you are about this, you're constantly digging and trying to learn more and asking questions, going to forums, watching videos, you're going to be kind of like an A student apprentice versus a C student apprentice who's just like showing up every day, doing some work and going home and not caring. So my biggest advice is for anybody that is new to the craft, consider it a craft. You are learning a skill. You're not just like learning some stuff for a grade that you can just forget later. So the more serious that you take this craft, the better you're going to be, the further that you're going to go. So really dive into it. Next one was Braun of all trades. Hope this love stays available. I think he meant live, or she. Can't watch now, but working to get into the electrical trade is a career change for later. Cool. Thanks for stopping by and saying something. Bill Gar, this is important stuff for people to know that want to get into the trade and keep up with the code and what the code demands of them. I taught this stuff as an instructor. Good for you, Dustin. Awesome. So that's another thing that I want to like point out. I'm not a code person. I'm not in the code making panel. My name's not in this book. So all of my code knowledge I've had to teach myself. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. And every electrician out in the field, your job every day is not to sit in code making panel discussions and go fly to all these different places and talk about code and learn code and discuss code. Even people on the code making panel, they don't know all of code. They just they talk in these groups of the things that they know a lot about, but a lot of them haven't been in certain environments. So like nobody really just knows all of code. So to think about this book as an ever-changing document that is constantly being upgraded, constantly being changed, argued about, debated about, interpreted differently, code's like a really weird thing. And with our code specifically, the language is really difficult. The reasons behind things kind of need interpretations. So if you're studying code and you're getting ready to take your test, or even just like as a field electrician trying to understand code, what I recommend is getting, can you flip the overhead? I recommend getting a handbook. This is the 2020. I don't have my 23 next to me, but like this is a solid hardcover book, right? Then you've got the regular code book. Most of the time when you go take a test, I don't know if every state does this, but most states that are like, especially like PSI states, PSI runs exams in a lot of the states, you're allowed to bring a code book and that's it. No pictures, no extra stuff in there. You can't like tape things in and have little cheats in there. A lot of them are really, you can highlight, you can write little notes in places, but you can't have entire monstrous paragraphs of things. They don't want you cheating, right? So they kind of want everybody to bring in the same code book, which is just a fresh book without pictures. But when you're studying and when you're really trying to learn code, having a handbook is great because check this out. Pictures. All this blue writing in here is extra interpretation by whoever made this actual book. And so lots of people have different books where they interpret code a little bit differently. And one thing you're going to notice is out on the internet, a lot of people disagree about codes. And this is constructive, it's healthy, it's totally fine because nobody really knows. Even people on the code making panel, a lot of times they have to come in and argue about stuff about what this means and what it, how, if this means this, does this mean something else? So this book is just constantly being chewed on by people. And you just learn a lot as you go through your career over the years. The more you put your head in this over years, the more you're going to start having an understanding of what everything is. So it's a little bit difficult to traverse, but I do recommend that you get a handbook. Like this handbook has so much extra stuff in it, pictures of things, explanations. The explanations actually a lot of the time, truthfully, have made me understand code that I didn't otherwise understand. Because they give you this extra bit and you're like, oh, that's what it's talking about. That's why it's the way that it is. So it's really great to have these. Unfortunate thing is, this regular book's probably going to cost you $100 anywhere you go to get one. This is probably going to cost you $200. And I think the prices have gone up, so that actually might not be accurate. I think that the prices for this have maybe even raised to like $150 and this is over $200 now. But for your career, you'll go spend $200 on a drill, right? And that thing burns out over time. This stuff is something that you need to learn. So I don't like teaching people exam prep stuff because I want to teach people to use the book and understand the book and find information for themselves and come up with their own informed opinions. I actually hate getting into discussions with people on code because a lot of people don't cite where they're getting their information from. And I always tell somebody, if you're like in the comments talking about that's not code, this is not code, your code, whatever, give me a reference, give me some kind of prove your position, prove your point. Or if you're saying I'm wrong about something, I'm okay with that, but prove it by showing me where I'm wrong. So that's a huge thing. When you talk about code, start to understand that code references are very, very important. It makes you educated and eloquent when you speak about stuff, even if you're like me and you talk kind of like an idiot. So don't laugh too hard at that trick. So these are two great resources. Another one that I want to mention, we were going to try to bring it up on screen, but it's just more difficult to figure out that. NFPA link. So NFPA, the National Fire Protection Agency, is who makes the code. This is NFPA 70. It's the electrical code. If you get an NFPA link account, I think it's another, they have like a monthly thing or a yearly thing, but you pay to have access to the book, and it has all of these explanations and pictures and everything in it, but it's an online version of it. So if you wanted to like copy and paste some stuff, send it to somebody, take screenshots of something, throw it in a chat if you're talking to somebody, it's really, really helpful. Plus there's a search feature in it. So if you're looking for like GFCI and you don't remember that it's in 210, you can just type in GFCI and then boom, it populates every instance of the word GFCI. And it just helps you like really navigate code and find things quickly and easily. So if it were me, again, studying to take my license, my exam, I would have the NFPA link thing, I would have a handbook, and I would have the actual book that I'm going to be taking in. I'm not sponsored in any way by NFPA. This isn't me trying to like hawk their merch on you. I'm just saying, as somebody trying to study, I want to know as much as possible, so I'm going to try to get as many resources as possible. And just keep in mind, every 3 years, you're going to have to buy it all again. So let's, before I get into the mnemonic and the structure of the book, let's see, do we have any more questions? We had... Bill Garr says the handbook has been a game changer and most people discover it too late. Yeah, I agree, man. I absolutely agree. Well, a lot of times they're apprentices, right? They don't have the money to go out and drop $100 on a book, let alone 200, 300 as they climb prices. So I get it. But dude, it makes all the difference in the world, truly. All right, Sean Pearson. Hi, I'll take my journeyman test next week. Any tips on tips and advice to master the code? I've been an apprentice for 4 years as an individual. Oh, you just scrolled. I can't see it anymore. 4 years industrial electrician. So I guess I would want to know what your level of understanding of code is. Like, are you 4 years in and you're just now starting to come across code? You've obviously like wired a lot of environments and probably heard, oh, you got to do this to code, you got to do that to code. Overall, I think the best way to know code is to be in this book frequently. So like even me today, if I'm not out in the field and I'm running across something, I'm like, oh crap, I don't know, like grounding and bonding, am I supposed to do this over here? When I'm in the field, I crack the book open and I start looking. I keep a book on me and I have the digital version that I can look things up. But having practice exams is another really great thing as you prepare to take your test, because a practice exam is basically a job site. It's a whole bunch of job sites, right? So every new question on a practice exam is going to force you to open this book, try to find something, and dig through to find the answers to it. So doing a lot of practice exams, I think, is a really, really great way to expose yourself to a lot of different parts of this book. The only problem with practice exams is that you might not understand the overall book itself to even know what the questions are asking you. So to save time, I'm actually on a time limit this time. My last one, I went an hour and a half, and I can't do that. I actually have to try to limit this to like 30-ish minutes. I can go over a little bit, but I'm going to cram through because I think to answer your question, the first step is understanding the book as a whole. So throw the overhead up here. I made this list. If you guys look down in the description, I just copied this entire thing and pasted it down there. So if you want to like copy, paste, put it into something and like print it out, this is the layout of the book. You know, you can go into this book into the beginning, table of contents, but look how crazy full of information this whole thing is. It's just too much information for you to understand it as a whole book. So what I wanted to talk about is the main parts of the book. And if you can wrap your head around the main parts of the book, and I'm going to teach you a little mnemonic to think about for this, you'll understand where things are easier, because nowadays I don't even have to think about it. There's some things like, you know, television studios and stuff. I don't know where that's at in code. I can't give you the exact article, but I know that it's a specialty occupancy, so I know it's going to be in chapter 5 somewhere. I know motors is going to be in 430, you know. So the other thing to answer your question too is make flashcards for like the main things, like Article 430, Article 250, Article 110, like very specific things that we deal with a lot. If you have flashcards and you can just remember 430 and motors for the rest of your career, you're going to be solid. So let's get into the actual structure of the book. So the book is going to be split into mainly 9 chapters. And these are the huge chunks of information. And within each chapter, there's a different intent to that portion of the book. There's different information and different reasons for each in that section of book. So you have, to start out, you have can you go back to overhead? Yeah. To start out, you have a table of contents, which is just a tool that you can use to understand like what's in the book, right? Table of contents like any other book. When you get forward, before we get into chapter 1, you're going to have an introduction, and that's going to be Article 90. So Article 90 just kind of gives you like, what is the code? When do you use it? How does enforcement work on it? This book is a standard that can be chosen by local authorities having jurisdiction on whether or not they want to adopt it. This isn't like law. This isn't federal law, state law. It's a private company that designs these standards, talks with the community about it, and they will, local, like the city of Austin or Boston or whatever, can choose to adopt this code or not. So they give a lot of information on how to adopt this code, how to enforce it, and stuff like that. So it's just kind of beginning stuff. Within Chapter 1, once we start Chapter 1, we have very basic information, and Chapter 1 applies kind of generally to every kind of building that you are going to go into. It's got all the definitions for the words used in here. Article 110 is kind of like general things for every kind of installation, right? But that's all of Chapter 1. So I'm getting ahead of myself. Actually, what I wanted to do was talk about each section. If you think of it like you're going to work every day, where you are throughout the day, if you connect this mnemonic, this visual image, to these numbers or these parts of code, I think it'll really help you understand. So what I think about is Chapter 1 is just general stuff. Say that you're driving to a job. You're in the truck. You haven't gotten to a job yet, so you don't really have anything specific about that certain job that you have to do or know. Chapter 1's kind of like riding in the truck. It's stuff you got to know before you show up to any kind of a job. There's lockout, tagout stuff in there. Or not lockout, tagout stuff. There's like lockable disconnecting means. That applies to like everything throughout code. There's spaces around electrical equipment. So what kind of space do you need to have in front of equipment, on the sides, how high, all kinds of stuff like that. It's stuff that like just generally applies kind of across the board to everything. So you're driving in your truck, you're in Chapter 1. Once you get to a job site, you pull out your plan and you go into the building and you start assessing the situation. Now you're in Chapter 2. So Chapter 2 is wiring and protection. What we do with Chapter 2 is we size conductors. We look at things like services. We figure out, do we have to have some things that are arc fault protected, ground fault protected. So this is kind of like your planning phase. Imagine you're going into a job and you're pulling out your plan. You're looking, well, there's a bunch of receptacles that I need to put in. The plan says there's a bunch here, but I don't know how many I'm supposed to put in, what their spacing is, where they're going. You're not doing any work yet once you get in here. You're just kind of assessing the situation and seeing, what am I about to do and how do I protect all of this stuff? So you got all of your breakers and fuses and stuff in there. It's kind of planning things out. The next thing is on a job, now you got to go get materials, right? You're going to do something. You go out to your truck, go get some materials, bring the materials into work. You're in Chapter 3, wiring methods and materials. So now you brought your materials in. Chapter 3 is largely just going to be the conductors and any raceways that you pull the conductors into. But right, you just went out, you brought all the rolls of wire, you brought conduit in, boom, now you're in Chapter 3. And so anything that you want to know about the wiring methods and materials, the wire and the conduit basically, is going to be in there. There's specific, articles within Chapter 3 that are like, one of them's just for Romex, one of them's just for UF, one of them's just for EMT conduit, things you can do, things you can't do. But it's the rules that govern the materials and the methods by which we install them. So it's not even just the materials, it's things like in table 300.5, we've got the underground cover requirement. So if you're going to bury conduit underground and run wire through it, you got to know what the depths are. So it's everything to do with installing the wiring and the raceways. And then, that's Chapter 3. The next thing that you're going to do in this series of your work is once you get everything wired, you're going to go put all the devices and the equipment in, right? That's the next logical progression in a job. Well, the next logical part of code is just that. It's equipment for general use. So you're going to have stuff about receptacles and switches and load centers, panel boards, things like that. Motors, all of your appliances, your heating, air conditioning. It's all the stuff you're going to hook up to the wires that you just ran in number 3. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Like as a mnemonic, you can just remember, okay, sitting out the truck is Chapter 1. I haven't even gotten to a job, so I can't even assess what kind of an environment I'm in. I am just, this is things that apply everywhere regardless. It's stuff I need to know before I even get to a job. Once you get to the job, you pull your plan out, go in and assess, figure out where all the spacing of your receptacles go, heights, stuff like that, do any kind of calculations that you need to do, figure out rules for the services and how this is all going to have to put together. And then you run out, go to Chapter 3, go out in your truck, get the materials, bring the wire and the conduit in, figure out how you're going to install all of them. And then Chapter 4, after you got it all wired, what about the equipment? We're going to hook up actual equipment. We're going to put these devices in. We're going to hook up a motor. Now, it's not just that easy. There's a lot of extraneous stuff around there, but I think if you remember that mnemonic, if you have something on a test that's like, you're going to be putting a motor in, you need to figure out what kind of branch circuit overcurrent protection device that you need to put in. Okay, well, we're talking about motors, so I probably need to be in the part of code where I'm installing equipment. That's probably chapter 4. Well, boom, you go into chapter 4, article 430. Well, I like the switch that you did there. You're like real clever with it, but I'm like nowhere near 430. That was clean though. Drake's back there running the board, running the show. But yeah, then you go to just like 430 and you're, well, here's 426. 430, motors and motor circuits. One thing that I want to throw out really quick, put the overhead back on, sorry. There's a lot of these articles, especially really big articles, like 430 is huge. It's just a monster, thick boy. They're going to have pictures, these figures inside of here. And what they do is they break down these really large things into parts. And they show you how to navigate all of it. Because it's so much information, they're trying to give you a quick visual guide for you to find stuff. So I think it's really, really good. Anytime you see a huge, the start of an article in a big picture, pay attention to that picture because it's going to help you understand where things are at. Okay. So that was the mnemonic for the first 4. And the reason that I stopped there is because the first 4 chapters in the code book are kind of just general stuff that all of us electricians are doing. Doesn't matter if you're commercial, residential, industrial, you're doing service work, construction. It's the main meat and cheese of code. But after that, there's some weird situations that we get into where the rules are not the same, or we have new rules because of the environment, the equipment, or some kind of weird emergency environment or something that we're around, that we have to take different codes and just throw those old ones away and put different codes in. So imagine that job that I just said, we wired everything, we hooked up the equipment. Imagine now that you're leaving a job. You back the truck up and you're headed to a different job. You don't know what kind of job you're going to get to, but when you get there, you're like, holy crap, this is a new environment. I've never been to a place like this. I don't even know what this building is. You're at what's called a special occupancy. So, right, when we get to a weird new building that we've never seen before, an occupancy is some kind of a place that's different than just the normal things in 1 through 4. There are some places that have to have special codes because the nature of how these places are used. A lot of it's just going to be commercial places. You might have like an auto mechanic shop and they've got like oil and weird stuff around that you have to think of. There might be a hazardous environment where they've got propane tanks and now you've got explosive environments. Well, sure, the 1 through 4 that we were just looking at, that's all cute and everything. But once we get into this and we need to have explosive, fittings, we're in like a something that has like dust fibers or little flyings that are combustible, anything that's corrosive. This is a special kind of an occupancy so that when we pull up on this job, we got to be like, okay, there's some different rules. I need to dig into this new part in chapter 5 to figure out this occupancy, this environment. Then chapter 6, once you strap up, get your tools on, and you go walk inside, you're going to be looking at the pieces of equipment inside of an occupancy, right? So now we're in special equipment. And it's not to say special equipment are in special occupancies. Special equipment are everywhere. There's specifically pieces of equipment that you work with that are different than the normal like appliances, the normal motors, the normal things that you're going to have in chapter 4. So when we get into chapter 6, we're talking like, here's some like weird stuff that might have some installation stuff that you got to really pump your brakes and pay attention to. And then the last thing is this chapter 7, special conditions. So this is now that you're in this new weird environment and you're trying to, figure out, okay, I'm in a new environment, I have new equipment. Maybe this place has some weird procedures that if power goes down, I need to have backup power. I need to like protect it because it's a weird environment. I'm speaking very generally. So any of you guys out there that are like trying to be like, well, that wouldn't work for this and that. I'm just giving you broad strokes for you to understand. Weird environment, occupancy, that's going to be 5. Like weird equipment, like pool equipment. It's not that the pool, the environment itself is dangerous. It's that the equipment that we're hooking up near pools has to have some specific things about it. So with your equipment, you're going to be in chapter 6. So that's really it. Those 5, 6, and 7 are the next kind of things that you need to picture in your mnemonic. So first, we went to like a residence, right? And we're doing a residential service call. That got us through 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we left and we went to some crazy like commercial building thing. That gets us through 5, 6, and 7. So if you're doing any kind of emergency procedures, emergency lighting, backup emergency power, stuff like that, it's a special condition. It's some kind of condition is changing, so I have to wire things a weird way. It's not that the occupancy itself is weird, it's that the situation that may arise may make me have to wire things a certain way. That's why it's a condition, not an occupancy. But that's the main chunks of everything that you need to know in code. And there are more. There's communication systems. So the last thing I think is like when you do enough, you can do forward. When you do enough service calls and like commercial service work, you go into a lot of Home Depots and Walmarts and stuff. Last thing that you have to do is go communicate with a manager. A lot of times you'll have to have like a phone call where you check in, check out, but you have to communicate. Hey, this is everything that I found. Here's what I did. We're going to send you an invoice, collect a check. You're communicating. So just remember, after that last one, we're in communication systems, and communication system is largely low voltage stuff. So a lot of people don't use chapter 8 for a whole lot. A lot of the testing, some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them are just not going to have anything from chapter 8 because it's all low voltage stuff. So you're talking networking and you know, like how things are secured and supported and signaling wires and stuff like that. And then the very, very last one, do go overhead. The very last one, I like to tie 3 and 9 together. 3, 6, and 9 kind of go together as numbers, but 3 and 9 really do go together. But 9 is all of your tables, and in the 2023 version of code, they took all of the annexes that were in the very back of the book, and they moved them into chapter 9. So table 9 is just your reference. Every kind of reference book, every textbook that you have, the referencey stuff is always in the back, right? So it's really easy to remember chapter 9 is where you're going to get extra information. The reason that I like to tie that to chapter 3 is because a lot of the wiring methods, the conduit and the conductors that you just brought in from chapter 3, you have to get their sizing, how many you can stick in a conduit, things like that, dealing with these conductors and conduit together. You have to go to the back of the book. You have to go into a lot of these annexes in chapter 9 and look for these certain values in here, what kind of conduit you're running, what size conduit is it? Is it the same number of conductors that I'm running through? Are they all different sized? How big is the conductors? How many of them am I stuffing in there? So that's what all of this stuff is in the back. Now, there are several annexes. So actually here, let me just flip open the annexes. Drake, you're doing great. I know it's hard for you to follow me. I'm sorry, y'all. He keeps flipping the camera back and forth, but he's doing a really damn good job back
there. I got you.
All
while
right.
you're flipping, there was a little bit of talk about tabbing your pages.
Oh, yeah. Stay there for a second. Let me pull up one of my older books and one of my newer ones. All right, so I definitely think you need to get tabs. This is my book from, what is this, the 14, large red print, 14 there, I couldn't find it. But yeah, I have all of these tabs put in. I like to run across the top and then run all the way down the bottom. I tried one year to put them all the way down on this side too, but they just got all mashed up and messed up. But yes, the tabs and the colored ones are like super, super helpful because you just know, like, you know, all of the blue is the same. It's chapter 2. All of the orange is chapter 3. So definitely tab. And the cool thing about tabs is it will actually tell you the kind of stuff that you're probably most likely going to get tested on. There's a reason these specific things were printed on these specific tabs, and most often it's going to be the most frequent things that we visit throughout code. So you're going to have table 300.5 minimum cover requirements. You open it up and you have a table for, like, you dig a trench and put conduit in it. How deep does the trench have to be? We deal with that all of the time. You're guaranteed to have a question on that on your test. But as an electrician practicing in the field, you need to be able to understand this table, and every new environment you go into, the different kinds of materials you're running, it's going to change the different burial depths of what you're dealing with out in the actual field. So understanding table 300.5, memorizing that so you never forget it, write that on a card and try to memorize with flashcards. That's super important. Now you'll see on this one that I've got here, This one's a little bit neater, right? So like this is something that I've had here at the studio. Everything's not all crushed up. This one I just chose to tab everything on one side, but I always take the last chapter 9 tables, the Annex C conduit and tube tables that I was saying kind of goes with chapter 3. Annex D tables for like examples. They give you all kinds of calculation examples in here. So if you're practicing for an exam and you're like, crap, I don't know how to size a service, like I don't get it. In Annex D, there's a whole crap load of examples for how to calculate things in there. And then the index too, like the index in the back of the book is a really great way to navigate this book. So you have 2 methods of navigation really. You've got your table of contents up front, which is just exhaustive and long, and it's kind of cumbersome to have to try to be like, oh, what part of code do I go in for this thing? You know, like just trying to traverse this kind of a table sucks. Some of you may like it. I just don't. I would rather go back to the index and find keywords, because like if you're on a website like Amazon or something like that and you're trying to find a book to buy or whatever, you're going to type in some keywords, hit search, and you just want all the results to come up. And if you're using NFPA link, like I said at the beginning of this, that's what you want to do. You just want to search stuff and let it come up with all of the different variations of the answers. So using the index to be like, okay, I'm dealing with a branch circuit. I'm going to go look in B's, try to find branch circuit. Branch circuits, boom. There's a whole crap load of things within branch circuits. So here's one disclaimer. My first exam, my first residential wireman exam in Texas, they have a 2-year license called a residential wireman exam. Sorry. I didn't know anything about this book. I had people around me that didn't really know a lot about the book either, and so I just had to take it on myself to go start Googling things and researching and coming across stuff for like a year. I had to just start digging into this stuff. But what I did for that first exam is I highly depended on the index thing for just looking up keywords. This is a terrible idea. Don't do this. But what I'm saying is you can find the information a lot easier using an index if you do this way. You still want to understand the flow of the book. You want to understand the different chapters. What's inside of them are actual articles. What are inside of articles is all of these different sections. And that we've got, images that you can work with. We've got tables. You still have to know all of the nuts and bolts inside of it. But using the index as a tool to help you find the things you can't find is actually a really good thing. I just would not use that as only a test thing. Don't study this, just go into your exam and start hunting and see if you can find all the answers. That's somebody that's terrible at code. So I don't think you should get a license if that's how you're using this code book. All right, so going back into the actual book, a couple of things that are worth noting, and I think I have this on my, let me get these out of here. On my sheet, I've got index. Okay, so how these chapters are organized is we have chapters, articles, parts, sections, and subsections. So again, I'm going to cover this, but this is all in the description underneath this video. So if you want to look at this while I'm going through it and see what I'm talking about, or even copy it, paste it, print it while you're studying, you can do that. But what this book is made out of is we have chapters, right? So let's get to the beginning of 300. Chapter 3. You'll notice it starts out on Article 300. So within a chapter, we have articles. And every chapter starts with the 00. So chapter 3 is going to be 300. Chapter 2 is going to start with 200. There is a little bit of overlap, like some of the numbers of articles and the sections, like the .23 or .14 or whatever. There are a lot of places through code where those very specific numbers actually mean something kind of universally through a bunch of different parts of code. So you'll start to learn stuff, little tricks like that, the more that you go through this. But within an article, we've got chapters, articles, we have parts. So not every single one of these articles is going to have a part. Parts are usually reserved for things that are a lot more complex. So the example I like to give is, let's go to Article 250 where we're talking about grounding and bonding. This is a huge part of code. There's a lot of information in here, and through your entire career, you're going to need to know this. Like I said, when you have a huge article like that is broken into parts, you're typically going to have a figure. And this will tell you part 1 is this kind of information. Part 2 is grounding systems. Part 3 is direct current systems. So you understand, like, I don't even have to waste my time during test day flipping through all of these different crazy things, thinking I'm finding what I think I'm finding, but I find out that I'm in the completely wrong part. The information is very similar, but it's not exact. So using these things to be like, okay, I can skip all this crap. I know that I'm specifically dealing with equipment grounding conductors. So that's only in part 6. So boom, I can skip ahead and go find part 6. So that's how this stuff is laid out. Again, parts are not going to be in every single part of code. It's just usually where you have like a lot of information that needs to be organized because of just the volume of it. So that is what a part is. Skipping to sections. All right, so like if I'm in a code, or if I'm in an article 250, I'm going to be in section 250.1. Section 250.6, right? This is a whole section of information. And it moves on from .6 to well, they skip around. Sometimes they leave space for any codes that could get added in the future. So you might not have a direct 0.6, 0.7, 0.8. One thing to be really careful of is 0.7 and 0.70 are not the same thing. That tripped me up as an apprentice so much when I was studying this book. I would see like 250.100 or something, and I'd be like 250.1, and I'm like, oh crap, no, it's .100. It's literally 100 of these sections that we've got in here. And then we've got within those, we've got like kind of subsections and subsections, but you'll have like 250.6. This is Article 250, Section 6, and we have a subsection, Part A, B, C, D, E. Some of them don't get broken up even further. You might have A1, A2, A3, A4. So there's a lot of like organization of these codes within the book. And that's part of the problem with the book and being so difficult to navigate is just you have all these different things everywhere. It's not even just the language. The language itself is so difficult when you're first starting out, but the organization structure of it, until you start flipping through this thing a lot and looking for solutions to problems on job sites and in practice exam books and stuff like that, you're not going to get an understanding of this. So you got to really dig into this stuff a lot. And it's going to be crazy at first, right? Like I'm in school right now. I'm taking Calculus 2 and computer programming. I'm learning how to program in C++. When I opened that Calculus 2 book, I was just like, like none of it. It was scientific symbols and crazy stuff. I didn't understand any of it. But after a couple weeks of doing homework and studying and digging and watching YouTube videos, I understand all the symbols now. I'm getting it. So that's my whole point is continual use of the book is the only thing that's going to get you to exam day where you feel confident walking in there. All right, so we had sections, subsections. Oh, the other thing to think about within an article is you're going to see exceptions. So there's, these are essentially rules, and with some of the rules, there's going to be exceptions. So let's look in here. We are in 250.30A1. Down here, we've got exception number 1, exception number 2, and exception number 3. So it's saying this is the code, but there are some specific exceptions that we're going to let you not have to do this thing if you're in these very specific sections. So it's not that the exception is not code and the rest of it is code. It's that the exceptions are also code, but they're ways to kind of break out things that might not apply to you specifically. So exceptions are usually, you're going to find exceptions in testing as well. Because on a test, they're going to want to see how can you rip through and find information in a timed fashion, because you're actually out in the field and you need to come up with answers on a real job with a real inspector standing in front of you. So efficiently, you need to find information. We had exceptions. We have tables. So in 250, let's go to 250.66, 250 dot. We have a table. Tables are going to be the source of a lot of your information. When you're trying to do calculations, figure out what size grounding electrode conductor do I have to run. I throw a ground rod in the ground, I have to put a conductor to it. You're going to be using tables for them. And you'll notice table 250.66 corresponds to code 250.66. So with tables, you're always going to have a code that has a certain blib of information, and then you're going to have the table for that as well. I always recommend in tables, pay attention to the notes. Every single table you touch, pay attention to the notes. Read all of the notes under every table, because you're going to be in the field doing something. You're going to do it wrong and fail an inspection because you didn't look at like, oh crap, this is my specific thing and I didn't even do it. I didn't pay attention to the note. My specific service, I can't do this, So the notes are really key. I'm running out of time. I'm trying to burn through this. I'm sorry, guys. I know you guys are on your lunch hour. That covers most of that. The last thing that I need to cover is the changes. So codes changed every 3 years. A lot of the information from a 2020 book is not going to be in the same place anymore in the 2023 book, and we got the 2026 coming up soon. So you're going to see some symbols inside of here. You're going to see this little delta symbol. Delta means that something in here was changed. That's as like crazy as you need to know about it. This table, there might even have just been a small note that was changed, like the word if was added. So they put a delta to let you know they changed something. Another thing that you're going to see, all of these are down here at the bottom too. You can't really see that, but it tells you what all of these symbols mean. So it means text deletions and figure table revisions. So that's actually more specific than what I just told you. Anytime you have shaded text, it means that they had some kind of a revision of that language. So they might have just put an S on jumpers or something like that, but all of the highlighted language, and there's tons of it, like every code cycle, there's tons of highlighting everywhere. So just know when you see highlighting, that's stuff that might have been moved from somewhere else that it already existed, or it's something new that they've added and changed. The other section that you're going to see, or the other like nomenclature that you're going to see, is this little N symbol. And N just means this is brand new material. This isn't just moved from somewhere else in code. This is completely brand new. So you'll have entirely new articles. Let me see if I can just flip right here. Boom. You've got a whole crap load of N's. This is all new things that were added in here into this code edition. And then you'll have a period. Period on the bottom is the last one. That might be a little bit more obscure. Oh, right here. That means that they're section deletion. So that means there used to be some stuff here and it ain't here anymore. It could be that it was moved somewhere else, or it could be that it was just completely deleted altogether. So did I do it in 30 minutes? When did we start this? 12:30. It's 1:10, 1:15. Do we have time for like a few questions? Okay. Michael Noble, Electrician U, are you against putting the stickers in the pages? LOL. No. So here's the thing. I am for people actually learning how to use the book as a professional and navigating it. I would never want to hire a lawyer that doesn't know how to use legal manuals and has to put stickers in their book to like cheat on stuff. So I'm against cheating because it actually means you're not good at your job, and the only reason you're having to cheat is because you're not good. And I'm just like way against that. I'm always for like growing and trying to be better. So if you have to cheat on something with cheaty stickers, like you're not ready for the test and you don't earn that you don't deserve the license that you're about to cheat to get. That's my thing. Depends on what they are. Like if you got like a little sticker that shows the Ohm's law formula wheel, like that's not cheating. I'm talking like if you went and hired or you went and paid for some guarantee to pass your exam class and they give you all these little stickers and shit to hide in your book because you don't know code and you're just trying to pass it, that's some hack shit, and I just don't believe in that. So I hope that was your question to it. But where I took my tests, I took all of them in Texas. They wouldn't let you have that. You would walk in, there'd be a lady at the reception desk, be like, all right, show me your calculator and show me your number 2 pencil or whatever you're allowed to bring in, and open your book up. And she literally goes like this. And she tries to get everything to fall out of it. She shakes it. She looks at every page. She makes sure there's no stickers or anything like that in there. So from a strictly testing standpoint, I say, yeah, don't do that. If you wanted to have like a book that had some stickers in it, and then the one that you're going to take on test day doesn't use stickers, I think that's fine. But again, the intent here is not to pass an exam. It's to understand this book, because for the rest of your career, you need to understand it. And you're going to need to know more and more, and it keeps changing. So that's the intent behind it. All right, let's do one more question. One more. Does Texas have any state legislature that trumps the NEC code? Here in Wisconsin, we have Article 316. Yes, so I will try to quickly say this. This is a long answer. This is something people choose to adopt, meaning if you have, like the city of Austin is a great example of this. City of Austin has City of Austin code. They adopt the National Electrical Code, but they take, I don't know, huge chunks out of this and huge articles, and they just scrap them and throw them away, and they rewrite their own. And so it's a mixed thing with local city ordinances and electrical code, and you have to follow both, and they kind of blend together. So every local AHJ or authority that has jurisdiction to, inspect things, they're going to have both their code and the electrical code a lot of times, because some of them don't care about this, and it's their right. And that's what Article 90 in here is all about, is if you're an authority and you're going to adopt this code, here's some suggestions that we have. Since this is optional for you, you can adopt this, but you can absolutely change it. So that's a very common thing actually in most places. Nobody's just 100% only NEC. Not that I know about. I mean, most inspecting bodies are going to have little quirky things that they want to change. So I'm sorry that I did not get to more comments. This is already longer than I meant to go. So thank you guys so much for being here. Truly, I really, really appreciate it. Every Friday for the foreseeable future, maybe not every Friday. I'm going to try to hit on Fridays though around lunchtime, and do something different for a live. So before you guys leave, write some comments if you want in chat. What are the kind of things you'd like to talk about? Because there's a whole bunch of stuff on materials we could talk about. There's stuff on theory. There's stuff on just livelihood of being an electrician and what paths you should take and stuff like that. There's stuff on tools. Like I can kind of go a lot of different directions with these lives. I don't want it to just be the same thing every week. Something like code, for us to get really specific and get into it, that's probably like a 10-week every Friday live on some new part of some, that's a lot to get through. If you're interested, we have Electrician U learning system. A lot of the stuff that we could be talking about, I've already pre-recorded a whole bunch of videos. So our learning system is something that we're developing. It's live right now. You guys are more than welcome to join it. It costs about a Netflix subscription. It's all electrical videos. There's a whole bunch of videos that we've put on YouTube. Obviously, we just mined all of that and organized it in there for you. But there's like hundreds of videos that nobody else has ever seen before. And it's code, it's leadership, safety, theory, all of the stuff, materials, tools, how to wire, how to troubleshoot. So if you're interested in something like that, go to electricianu.com. There's a link down in the description below. There's one for individuals and one for businesses. So if you have a whole bunch of techs, 500 employees, 5 employees, 5,000, you can get all of them signed up in the learning system, and we can, it allows you to issue training through a dashboard and see, who's learning what. Also, if you're looking for practice exams, like I said, practice exams are a great way to just cram through questions and have to flip the book to find things. We have a bunch of practice exams, link in the description below. Feel free. They're organized by license. And we also have continuing education. So we're approved by states, in a lot of states, to offer continuing education. So we have videos that are just kind of like this, me talking about stuff. It's better than listening to the Siri voice on the screen of like some automated thing, I think. But come check out our stuff. I love you crazy people, and thank you again for all the support over the years. Stay classy.